Welcome to Whitewater, a place you can belong before you believe. Wherever you are on your spiritual journey, we want to help you take your next steps towards Jesus. We're both a gathered and scattered church, meeting on Sundays at Cascade Christian and in homes, parks, backyards, and online. We exist to be a blessing and bring the whole person and the whole community into a flourishing life with Jesus. Welcome to Whitewater.
Hey everyone, Michael here. Welcome to Whitewater Church. Whether you're joining us online or in person, this is a place that you can belong before you believe. And man, it feels so good now that things are starting to open up. Things are feeling a little bit more normal. As a celebration of things opening back up, I would like to personally invite you to my backyard on Wednesday the 14th for a taco night. We're gonna have tacos, we're gonna have live music, and it'll be an awesome opportunity to connect, to see one another. I've missed you guys, and I really hope to see you there. And I want to give a special thanks to everyone who has supported us financially this last year. It has been a strange and trying year, and God has done amazing things through our church this year, despite the circumstances, and it wouldn't have happened without your guys' support. Corinthians 9:7 says, "Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver." We say at Whitewater that everyone is on a spiritual journey. It doesn't matter where you are, it matters where you're headed. And we also believe that everyone is on a generosity journey. And there's different stages of that journey that people can be on. One is tipping. You know, George has a great sermon, tells a funny joke. You like the worship, or I play a great guitar solo, and you'll leave a tip. And that is a step of generosity. For some people, it's giving when they have some. When you have a little bit extra, we'll go ahead and give that. That's a step of generosity. Giving a percentage of your income is a step of generosity. The Bible has this standard that they set called the tithe, which is the first 10% of your income. And I think that's important. It teaches us to trust God. It teaches us to recognize that He's our provider, and helps us to become thankful and grateful people. And the New Testament also goes beyond that and talks about radical generosity, giving above and beyond the tithe to see God do amazing things through the church and the community. And it doesn't matter where you are on that journey. It just matters that you know, and through the community. I want to encourage you, as we're coming out of the strange year and we're figuring out what our new normal is, to take some time and reflect and talk with your spouse or family. Where are you at on your generosity journey? Where would you like to be? And what kind of steps do you want to take? And if you want to join us financially and you have not, there's two ways you can do that. You can go to our website, whitewaterchurch.org, or you can mail us a check. We love you guys, and I am so excited to see what God is going to do through our church in this next season. The best is yet to come. Enjoy today's service.
Isn't it interesting that we can go to two different restaurants that are both in the hospitality business and have two different experiences? At one restaurant, you can, feel warmth immediately when you come in. They seat you really quickly, or if you have to wait, they communicate with you. And then, someone takes your order really quickly and they keep your coffee filled, and they keep your tea or whatever you drink filled. And then the food's fantastic. It just is a wonderful experience. And then when you leave, you want to go back. And in the same hospitality business, you can go to another restaurant where it's the complete opposite. You walk in, it feels cold. You have to wait a long time with no communication. When you finally get seated, it takes a long time to even get your order. Your coffee's not filled or refilled. Your tea isn't refilled. And then the food's meh or horrible. And when you leave, you're just I'm never going back there. And the difference is between a place that wants you there and is hospitable, and another place that doesn't really care and is inhospitable. And I want to be looking at this question: how can we as a Christian community, how can we as individual Christians create environments of hospitality in a world that sometimes can be very hostile or inhospitable? Hebrews 13:2. Don't forget to show hospitality to strangers, for some who have done this have entertained angels without realizing it. This verse reminds us that the Christian tradition is rooted in a spirituality of hospitality, of inclusion, of warmth, and of belonging. That tradition, it takes work, it takes commitment, it takes prioritization, but we find it in the person and work of Jesus. Jesus was always including people. Wherever he went, there was a party. People were always invited and welcomed. And so I want to take just 2 weeks, this week and next, to look at how we move from maybe a world of hostility into a community of hospitality. Or how can we move from a season of hurt into a season of hospitality? As we come out of the pandemic, I think the church has a tremendous opportunity to waken our world back up with the ancient practice of hospitality. So I want to read through this passage. This is actually from the Old Testament, drawing on some really ancient roots this week. Next week, we'll be looking at hospitality from like a story of Jesus. But this week, I want to read this passage and really look at discussing 4 keys to hospitality and 4 reasons for hospitality. Now, let's just read through the passage first, and then we'll break it down. Genesis 18, 1 through 15 says this: "The Lord appeared again to Abraham near the oak grove belonging to Mamre." Now, whenever I read that, I'm a child of the 80s. So the oak grove belonging to Mamre reminds me of Mumra from Thundercats. So if there's any Thundercats fans out there, you should be able to remember this, no problem, the rest of your life. Anyway, sorry, let's keep going. One day, Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent during the hottest part of the day. He looked up and noticed 3 men standing nearby. So just to stop for a moment, we hear that God is interacting with Abraham. And Abraham is kind of like he's known as a father of faith and a model for faith. And this is one of the interactions that Abraham has with God. It says that when Abraham saw these 3 men, he ran to meet them and welcomed them and bowed low to the ground. And it's interesting, he says in verse 3, "My Lord." To these 3, he says, "My Lord, if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while water is brought to wash your feet. And since you've honored your servant with this visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue on your journey." "All right," they said. Do as you have said." So interesting, it goes from the singular to the plural. "My Lord," says Abraham, and it says they said. Many theologians and spiritual writers have identified as like a Trinitarian moment, the 3-in-1 God the Father, Son, and Spirit. Somehow, like symbolically, Abraham is interacting with a 3-in-1 God, which is mysterious. It's hard to explain, but anything where the human is interacting with the divine is there's mystery to it. In verse 6, it goes, "Abraham ran back to the tent and said to Sarah, 'Hurry, get 3 large measures of your best flour, knead it into dough, and bake some bread.'" It's like, we got to get the party started. We got to be hospitable. Verse 7, "Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to a servant who said to him, 'No, I'm vegan.'" No, I'm just kidding. He quickly took it and prepared that calf. And when the food was ready, Abraham took the yogurt and milk and the roasted meat, and he served it to the men. And as they ate, Abraham waited on them in the shade of the trees. This is the art of hospitality. Now, check this moment out. In verse 9, "Where is Sarah, your wife?" the visitors asked. "She's inside the tent," Abraham replied. Then one of them said, "I will return to you about this time next year, and your wife Sarah will have a son." Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent, quietly in the background. And Abraham and Sarah were both very old by this time, and Sarah was long past the age of having children. And so she laughed silently to herself and said, "How could a worn-out woman like me enjoy this pleasure, especially when my master, my husband, is also so old? So not only am I old, but he's old too. How is this going to be possible?" So she's chuckling to herself at the audacity and the silliness of this statement. And then in verse 13, "Then the Lord said to Abraham," notice it goes to the Lord, says to Abraham, "Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, 'Can an old woman like me have a baby?' Is anything too hard for the Lord? I will return about this time next year, and Sarah will have a son." It's a promise from the Lord. Sarah was afraid. Like all of a sudden, she realized that This was someone special. This was God, because he could hear her internal like laughter and her incredulity. Like, this can't be happening. Sarah was afraid, so she denied it, saying, I didn't laugh. Have you ever done that? Like, laughed at something or just thought something was ridiculous, and later someone asked about, I didn't laugh. But the Lord said, no, you did laugh. Isn't that great? God just calls her out. No, you definitely did laugh. And I think this is a moment that's foreshadowing the miraculous birth of Jesus. This is God moving forward, the people of God, like the promise that he's gonna create a people that become a blessing to the whole world. And I mean, this is God's goodness, his promises being fulfilled in action. I think when we see at the end here, after all this hospitality, and then we see the promise of God happen, we see this moment of pain. Because Sarah doesn't think she can hope or believe that she really can have a child, which has been her heart's desire for a long time, if you know the story. Both her and Abraham have wanted children, and they've never been able to have children. And if you've ever gone through something like that, I mean, that is a deep point of pain. And I think in the story, we're seeing that we need to pay attention to the things that we downplay, the things that maybe we laugh out loud so that we can kind of downplay them. Sometimes we laugh to downplay our deepest pain and our deepest longings, our desires. We play this protection game to kind of laugh at what we actually want most. I can't have a baby. So we kind of harden our like we have a hardened heart on the outside, but inside there's hurt there. Or, I really wanted to be married, but you're not. But you'll like laugh out loud, but it's like really painful inside. And there can be all kinds of stuff. I wanted this business, it didn't happen. I wanted this thing in my life, and it didn't happen. Life just took a left turn that I didn't expect, and then we cover it. But I love this. Is anything too hard for the Lord? Was what God said. This is a moment where we learn that hospitality, asking someone to come into our life to bring in a new perspective, gives us the ability to see a new future. It allows faith to kind of arise in the situations. And sometimes we might laugh and maybe even balk at the impossible. But God loves to do things that defy our expectations. And then I think in this passage, we see that hospitality helps us process our pain. Hospitality helps us move from hurt into hospitality ourselves. So here's 4 keys to hospitality. And hospitality is simply the art of honoring other people through invitation and presence. So here's the first key. See people, engage them, and welcome them. Look at Genesis 18:2. It says that Abraham looked up and noticed 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran to them and welcomed them, bowing low to the ground. See, he sees them, then he runs and engages them, and he welcomes them in. I mean, this is key to hospitality. See, sometimes we want to act as the guest rather than be the host. And when we become a Christian, we kind of have the mantle put on us that we're the inviters, we're the welcomers. And we give belonging. We don't just wait for others to give belonging to us. As much as we might want to be passive, Christians are called to follow Jesus into proactivity, into hospitality. And so we put others first. We put ourselves in other people's shoes. We don't wait. We take an interest in people. We ask questions. We see people. We engage them, and we welcome them. I have a family member who just lights up the room, not because they're so interesting or trying to be interesting. They take interest in other people. And so I want to encourage you, instead of trying to be an interesting person, try to be an interested person and see what happens. And honor people by telling them how much of an honor they are to you and welcome them in. Second key, invite people in, serve them, and give them rest. Here, Genesis 18:3-4 says this, "My Lord," Abraham said, "if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while water is brought to wash your feet." This is a deserty area. It's in the heat of the day. And this ancient Middle East hospitality, it embodied itself in rest, or giving people a time of rest and washing their feet because they wore sandals, and giving them a place to feel safe and feel home. And it starts with invitation. Invitation is so important because everyone has a fear of rejection. Have you ever walked into a room like the first day in a class in high school or middle school or elementary school, and just been like afraid of rejection, or you're the new kid, or maybe at your new place of work, or maybe you're in church, maybe even today, and you're like, are there people who will like me? Are there people who are like me here? And that fear of rejection, I think, kind of lingers in our hearts. And when we invite people in, they know it's safe. They know that they're wanted and they're welcome. And we can invite people into our lives on social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it might be, or text. And I think that's so good, but never forget the power of personal invitation, reaching out, through those forms, but also, in person. And so when we serve people, it gives them the ability to rest, just to rest. And I think people are so tired and worn out. Not only hurting, not only going through the hard last year, but people are just tired, and we can give them rest by inviting them in, showing hospitality. The third key is eat great food. In Genesis 18, 5 through 8, we read this part. And since you've honored your servant with this visit, says Abraham, let me prepare some food to refresh you. So then Abraham runs back and talks with his wife. They make some bread. They barbecue some meat, and then they make some milk and honey and have a great beverage, and they bring it to their guests. And I love this moment because it says that Abraham waited on them at the end of this. He waited on them in the shade of the trees, or in the shade out of the sun. And he gives them like this great barbecue. The smell of barbecue when that happens, it's just so refreshing and so like relaxing. And then they have a craft beverage of really, really good honey and milk, like probably most of us do. But I just want to encourage you, when we're hospitable, there's nothing like eating together and breaking bread together. Maybe having a great craft beverage, maybe a homemade one like kombucha, or my friend Sam makes a really, really good ginger beer or root beer or whatever it might be. Get creative. If you can't cook, invite someone who can, or invite people to bring food. You don't just have to be the one who makes it too. People can love being able to bring something to the party, and it just puts people at ease. And we have some, just so you guys know, in our church, we have incredible cooks and incredible hospitality masters. We have friends like Tammy or Heidi, and my friends Sam and Trista, Mike and Kenny, the list could go on, and I'm sure I left out many, many people. They know how to make great food and create great environments where people can just be refreshed and relax. The fourth key of hospitality is this: refresh people for their journey. Refresh people for their journey. Genesis 18:5 says, and since you've honored your servant with this visit, says Abraham, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue your journey. It's like, I want you to carry my hospitality with you today and into the week. I think that's so cool. And he wants to refresh them. The definition of being refreshed is to give new strength or energy, to be revived, reinvigorated through food, rest, drink, or just friendship. And in this day and age, I think people's souls are tired and worn out and weary. And hospitality has the ability to refresh the soul. Souls that are disconnected, lonely, hurting. Just assume people are carrying something and they're heavy, burdened. When you invite them in, and as you send them back out from a time of rest and fun and friendship, send them out with some food for the road. Maybe you actually give them some ribs or give them some actual food to carry with them, but also that lingering sense of presence and friendship. Wow, I just felt so loved. I felt listened to. I felt cared for. I want to go back. And that's when we are refreshing people's souls. So what do you think are some of the reasons we might not give hospitality? We might kind of close the doors to our hearts, to our homes, and to maybe even our church. I think sometimes we can hang on to hurt or maybe hostility between us and others. Rather than be hosts, we want to just be guests. That can keep us. That's kind of a mindset. We want to remain passive rather than proactive. Sometimes it's our upbringing. We grew up in homes that didn't practice hospitality very much. And so we just don't know. Well, you got friends who can teach you. There's lots of shows. You can YouTube it. There's lots of ways to educate yourself. And there's no better education for hospitality than just experience, inviting people over and learning. And, or going to a park, whatever you feel comfortable doing these days. But that art of hospitality, it's a mutual transformation. And sometimes our attitudes, our busyness, our lack of maybe money or resources, or a lack of generosity, or maybe we're just scared of people, we have a social anxiety. All these things can prevent us from having a moment, creating a space where people who come from different backgrounds, think differently than us, come maybe with their own fears and their own burdens. We create a space where there can be mutual love and transformation. And I don't want us to miss out on that. The church should be leading in hospitality as the world is kind of coming out of this hard time. And we can be part of their healing, because when hospitality happens, hurts kind of evaporate, hardship evaporates, hostility evaporates, and love is created in this space. Here's 4 reasons for hospitality. The first is build life-giving relationships. It's so important that we just build life-giving relationships. That's a great reason to be hospitable. Another reason is giving and receiving. Giving and receiving. When we give ourselves and we receive from somebody else, whether it's food or it's a beverage or it's just relationship and it's a story and it's conversation and it's friendship, this is so good for the soul. It's how relationships are formed. The third reason for hospitality is this. When you invite someone in, you invite the presence of Jesus, the presence of Christ. In Matthew 25, we see that God will someday give the world the relationship that they want with God or not with God. God says, if you want a relationship with me for eternity, you can have that if you want me. If you don't have to have a relationship with me for eternity. And we see in Matthew 25, it says about the king. It's talking about God. The king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the creation of the world. For I was hungry and you fed me. I was thirsty and you gave me a drink. I was a stranger and you invited me into your home." Now listen to this. Verse 37. Then these righteous ones will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink, or a stranger and show you hospitality?" And the king will say, "I tell you the truth, when you did it to one of the least of these, my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." So when we show hospitality to others, especially those who are the down and outs and people who are on the outside looking in a lot, we actually are inviting the presence of Christ into that moment. In the story of Sarah and Abraham, in the moment of hospitality when they invite the 3-in-1 God, there's this moment where Sarah laughs because she has this feeling of pain and loneliness. And there's no way I can have a child. There's no way that my deepest desire and hope can happen. In the middle of that loneliness and hardship, that's where the presence of God comes in and promises change. See, here's the 4th reason. Invitation leads to transformation. Invitation leads to transformation. As God transforms our guests, he will transform us. As people experience your love by inviting them in, you will experience God's love and transform. New things will become possible because you invited someone into your life, into your heart, and somehow mysteriously and wonderfully, Jesus is present and doing some work on the inside and the outside. I had a friend who jumped in and helped at this big event that we do. We throw this big party. It's like a big hospitality moment for our church, where we do a big party at Christmas for the foster care community. And he had never helped before, and he jumped in and he became Santa. Like, he wore Santa's clothes, and he was the guy who all the kids got in line for, and they got pictures with him. And I talked with him later, and he said becoming Santa in that moment for those kids, many of which, this might have been their first good experience or first experience ever with some kind of Christmas party where they get to receive gifts. He said being Santa just lit him up, because he got to see the kids get lit up, and this moment of joy for them became joy for him. Christmas, the spirit of Christmas, which we really know as the spirit of Jesus, filled his heart because he was seeing the kids impacted so much. Our church will be transformed as much as we are hospitable to our community. Our church will be transformed when we invite and welcome and love other people. Revelation 3:20 says this, "Look, I stand at the door and knock," says Jesus. "If you hear my voice and open the door, I will come in and we will share a meal together as friends." May we be a church and a family that brings people in and shows the hospitality of God. As we're entering this summer, I want to really invite our church to create moments of hospitality. And I know that people have different comfortability with being together, different boundaries right now, and that's totally fine. But I think that we can find creative ways to be hospitable, and different people have different needs right now. I know one thing, that the church can and should be the leading force of hospitality in our world, because Jesus was the most hospitable leader in the world. He created a family of inclusion for those who thought they were on the inside and those who knew they were on the outside. They were all invited to the family of God. And friends, I want to invite us to create that environment this summer.
Salvation sounds a new beginning. Predestined hearts begin believing. Redemption's bid is unrelenting. Oh yeah, your love goes on. Your love goes on. Carry it. Carry us when the world gives way. Oh, you cover us with your endless grace. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Your love is relentless. Yeah. The time is through for chasing shadows. You gave the world a light to follow, a hope that shines beyond tomorrow. Oh yeah, your love goes on. Your love goes on. You carry it. Oh, you carry us when the world gives way. Oh, you cover us with your endless grace. Come on. Your love is relentless. breaking through the veil of darkness, breaking every chain. You set us free, fighting for the furthest heart. You gave your life for all to see, breaking through the veil of darkness, breaking every chain. You set us free, fighting for the furthest heart. You gave